come what may, I'm headed down the right path. I feel so brave, my head held high and I'm showing class. Dreams ignited, every day I truly give my best. I'm thriving excitedly to be the very best version of myself. I'm so bold and I'm so brilliant. I feel amazing, I feel so resilient. I'm so bold and I'm so brilliant. I feel so amazing, I feel so resilient.
Get to know Deanna Hamilton, Senior Vice President of Development at LISC. She spent over 2 decades building partnerships that spark affordable housing, small business growth, and youth development. Today, she shares her journey, challenges, and the mission that drives her work. Deanna Hamilton, welcome to the Chundria Show. How are you today?
I am great. How are you?
I am great also. Thank you so much for being my special guest today. I've been pretty enamored by reading your bio and reading all of your impressive accomplishments. Just me as a woman and me as a Black woman. You are truly an inspiration to me personally. So I just wanted to start today's interview off with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we dive on in here, of course. So, you've built an inspiring career with LISC. And for those of you that don't know, that's Local Initiative Support Corporation. Deanna serves as the Senior Vice President of Development for LISC. And I'll add that it's rooted in community. You're rooted in advocacy, you're rooted in entrepreneurship. What personal experiences sparked your passion for service and leadership?
Oh, I would have to take that back to growing up. In a house full of women who, as we know, get it done. And I watched my mother, as we would say, or the kids say today, by the block. And probably when I was 12 years old, I realized what was happening in front of me. She started with a corner muffler shop. And then she bought the parking lot next door. And then she bought the cleaners next door to that. And then she bought the party store next door to that. And she bought that entire block. And then around the corner was an affordable housing unit. And she brought that. And so growing up in that environment in Michigan, in Detroit to be exact, you quickly see and understand and realize what you are experiencing and some of the systemic issues that happen in Black and Brown communities, not just in Detroit, but across the country. And I remember her saying to me, you have a sixth sense and a seventh sense. And God has given you an intuition to understand how to read things, people, and environments. And as a result of that, I think you understand what you are seeing and experiencing right now and why this is necessary for me to do this, so that you and your sister and brother actually have a foothold to stand on as you begin to navigate your life's journey. And so that was the beginning of what was happening around me. And it actually thrust me into servant leadership. And who knew, fast forward all these years later, as I began my career, that I would begin to stand in that and really understand its power. And for me, it's really personal. I call it passion work. It is trying to ensure that my community and minority communities specifically really have a foothold.
I love that about you. I love that the passion started right at home, with your elders. But I love that it sparked something in you that never died. It sparked a purpose in you. And that is just really refreshing to hear that you follow that, because it could have been, instilled in you young, but you could have not followed it. You could have chosen a completely different career, which would have been okay, but because you chose to serve others, it really shows how deep your heart is, for serving others, for helping build others in such a meaningful way. And so I wonder, just hearing how you started, how you got to the point, you kind of gave me a quick version of that. But along the way, if any, what challenges did you face in that journey, and how did that shape you as a leader?
When I get asked that question, I sometimes have to chuckle, because I tell people, you would assume, or some people would assume, that in this journey, racism was a hurdle. For me, it was sexism, because I decided that I wanted to be an accountant. And oftentimes I found myself in undergrad and grad school as the only woman and the only minority in my classes because what I was studying, which was started as accounting and I switched to finance. I took a stock market class and I loved it. And so I changed my major to finance. And the hurdle was always having a voice in the room. And the voice was as a woman. And then add to that, a woman of color made it even that more difficult. And as I think about starting my career, I have these moments that I could share that people would chuckle at, but at the time they were very serious of, as at Chrysler at the time, which is Stellantis, having to stand on the chair and address a peer who came and stood over me and pointed his finger and was chastising me, and calling me stupid. And because he was so tall, thank God for instinct and that intuitiveness, I stood on my chair so he and I could be eye to eye. And my boss stuck his head out of his door and gave me a thumbs up after he walked away. And it was moments like that, or having conversations with my mother about challenges I was having in the workplace. And she would say, it's always your word against theirs. So make sure when you have the conversation, you're pulling them in the coat closet or you're pulling them in the supply room. And so I had so many of those moments. And it was not an easy journey, but I had an amazing support system where I could have those honest conversations. My grandmother was the first female foreman of champion spark plugs in the history of the automotive industry. And so when I talked to her about it, she said to me, "Oh, that's normal." And I'm like, it's not normal. It might have been normal in the 40s and 50s, but in the 90s, this is not normal. And so I had so many of those instances, especially being the only woman of color in the room often, that those were probably the biggest hurdles. And thank God I was raised by some very strong women, who always taught me never to cower, that my voice was valid, that my intellect was real and factual, and that I should always, always never ask for permission. And that advice is what carried me through and gave me the opportunity to handle a lot of those situations.
Deanna, you stood in a chair.
I did.
Over
I stood on a
somebody.
chair and a table.
I'm really sorry that you had to go through that, but I am very proud. And I know that your family, are very proud of you just because you show bravery and courage and, what they instilled in you to have a voice, to use your voice, not only have a voice, but then to use it and defend yourself and advocate for yourself, even when nobody else will. It sounds like the boss didn't even advocate for you. But then when you were done advocating for yourself, you got a thumbs up in the corner. Like, okay, I had to take care of me, which I think is, which is a whole nother conversation for another day when we're talking about protecting women, etc. But what sticks to me is we keep coming back to this word purpose and how that purpose has been in you for a really long time. And then how you're using that to empower others in the same way that it was instilled in you to be powerful, to use your voice. Now you're using that, but I know it's a general question, but I really like to know what the word purpose means to you and how you'd encourage others.
Purpose really means identifying what is truly, truly in your soul. And oftentimes, I always say people live very unconsciously, and we don't do the shadow work to understand what our unconscious thoughts mean. And when we do that type of work, what we will realize is, what is that thing in your soul that excites you? It sounds really corny because we always hear this growing up. What would you do for free? But that is the truth. What is it that you would do for free? And what is that passion work that really, really gets you up in the morning and that you want to dive into? If you just harness those three questions, you will realize that that is really your purpose. And I always tell people that I'm spiritual, not necessarily religious, because I believe that, religion and universe can kind of parallel one another in a lot of ways. But the reality is that gut instinct is truly, truly purpose work. And I believe that your soul really answers God's will for your life. And if you do that type of work early on, I tell my mentees all the time, forget about looking for the job with money, forget about trying to appease your parents and what they desire you to be. You really have to dig deep into the unconsciousness of your soul and tap into that. That is where your purpose lies. And if you can tap into that early, everything else will come. And I feel like my mother set the tone for that. And watching her and my grandmother specifically, and even my sister, do the work that they enjoy, especially my grandmother. I always say my mother gave me the tenacity and the demeanor and the resilience, but my grandmother taught me empathy and compassion. And mixing those two really helped me tap into my purpose and that soul work. And I remember at 25, I was leaving Chrysler and I was driving home and I passed Catholic services and they had this banner on the gate that said, I think it said therapy sessions or something for $25. And I made this U-turn and pulled in there. And that was the first time I saw a therapist at 25. It was the most life-changing and game-changing decision I have ever made for my life. Because it actually helps center and repurpose what I was thinking but wasn't necessarily doing. And it made me dig a little deeper into my shadow work to understand really how to listen to that intuitiveness, how to understand that soul purpose. And it set me on a course that was literally game changing for my life. So I always tell my mentees, do that work early. And once you do it and understand what that purpose is, you will begin to make life-defining decisions that will make everything else easy. The money will come, the people will come, you will attract your tribe, you will attract your mate, all of those things. Because it's really about not only tapping into your purpose, but also learning how to be self-aware, how to be mindful, but more importantly, how to love yourself.
The beauty of that advice is that it, like you just said, it can be applied in your professional and your personal life. And it can lead to more fulfillment in life. It's just like doing the work now for yourself, can give you the life you want, in the future, so it's incredible advice for sure. And it makes me wonder what a day in your life is like at LISC as the Senior VP of Development, and for you said you do have mentees that you empower and inspire and you connect with, but like, what's a day in your life like?
A day in my life at LISC is very energetic. The work that we do is so life defining. We deploy, since our inception, we've deployed 32 billion into communities across the country to create economic mobility, whether it's affordable housing, small business, early childhood education, urbanization. The work is so transformative for communities. And so a day in the life is waking up and before I go to bed, I look at my calendar to see what I intend to do the next day. But it's always something that gets thrown in because we're ever evolving in this work and trying to ensure that we're deploying our capital in a way that is really touching community. I always say we are 365 days, 24/7 boots on the ground to ensure that we are deploying capital in spaces and places that ensures that people have the ability to build 360 holistic communities that allows them to thrive. And so it may start as A, but it probably ends at about G. if I'm lucky. Sometimes it ends at Z. It just really depends on what is happening because we are oftentimes reacting to a plethora of things that are going on in the world, in the country, in a city. And we always want to make sure that we're able to respond in the most effective and positive way possible, especially to our community partners that we're doing this work with. And so I wish I could tell you that a day is the same, but it's not. Yesterday, for an example, was busy. Today has been a little mild. Tomorrow, it could be on 1,000. It just really depends. But it's really about how do I process what is happening, strategically do that, build strategy around it to ensure that I am, one, influencing the team that does the heavy lifting on my behalf. They make me look really good, but they're taking my strategy and they're operationalizing it. And so, how do I support them in the work that they're doing? How do I support our stakeholders, which for me is our funders, to ensure that they understand where they should be making these investments and that we are getting those investments out in a timely manner that truly, truly impacts community. I always tease our CEO and say, you did not tell me I was going to be working this hard. But it is the beauty in it all. It is the most fulfilling work I have ever done.
I love that. And I love that you feel that way. And I love that you get up every morning and you're excited to do the work, even for maybe some of the less glamorous tasks or challenges that might come your way in a day, but it seems like since your early days, have been known to take what comes, take the challenges and figure it out. Everything, I can figure this out, and I think that's the beauty of your leadership. Is the beauty also is in your optimism. The beauty is in your faith. The beauty is in your ability to encourage others, because you know that you're mentoring individuals that are going to come through to challenges as well. And you're a leading example of that. Like, we can figure this out. I will figure this out. You can figure this out, and so you're an incredible example of that. And it sounds like you're juggling, on any given day, you're wearing all these different hats. Sometimes you're tapping into the businesswoman, the mentor, the advocate, meeting the needs of the community, and all of that. How do you stay grounded while you're doing?
So I ground myself every morning. And so I wake up to prayer and meditation. And then I put myself to sleep to journaling. I always try to make sure that I write down what I am grateful for in the day. And when I am journaling in the evening, I just write. I don't edit myself, so that I am pulling out everything that I'm thinking and feel, so that when I go to bed, it's restful. And then in the morning, I always ground myself with starting with prayer and meditation. Even though, some people love exercise, I hate it with a passion. However, it's necessary. And the one thing I do once I do all of those things is I literally turn on my gospel playlist as I'm getting dressed. And that for me is to ensure that when I step into my home office or step into a meeting, that I am truly grounded and calm. And I am entering that environment whole and peaceful and not bringing any external baggage with me. And that has worked for me for 37 years. And I don't see any reason to change it. I'm a Taurus, so we don't like change. So I see no reason to change it. But it has worked really well for me.
I imagine it also maximizes your productivity too, so that you can not only show up for your work, but show up for your teams as well, and show up for the communities that you serve. Because, as they say, don't pour from an empty cup. You're wholeheartedly replenishing yourself. You're practicing self-care in your own way. You're journaling, you're releasing, it sounds like you're getting enough sleep, you're drinking enough water, you're doing all the things, and so it's really commendable that you take care of yourself, mind, body, soul, spirit, in that way, not only so that you can be, your best version of yourself, but you're being your best version for your staff, your team, and your mentees. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree. I am huge on self-care. I get a massage every Sunday. I had to learn that, though. There was a time in my career where I was self-sacrificial to the point of exhaustion. And so what I am speaking to you now is wisdom and lessons learned, and understanding that you are no good for anyone else until you are good for yourself.
Love that. That's a mantra. That's one for the wall, the book, the journal, the phone, the notes, the everywhere. Put it on a poster board. Deanna, this has been stupendous. And as we near the end, we're not quite done yet, but as a closing question for you, for anyone watching who might be afraid to step into that power that you have held on to for decades now, or might be afraid to share their story publicly, not fully aware that it could help the next person, maybe afraid to mentor, maybe afraid to share, maybe afraid to collaborate, just operating in fear of some sort, self-doubt, self-sabotage. Do you have any closing advice you would give to that person if they're...
Sure. One thing I always tell people is to take up space. Take up as much space as you need to simply be you. The world around you will adjust. Those that matter don't mind, and those that mind do not matter. It is really just that simple. It is so important for us to understand that whatever our reality and truth is, no one is going to beat us up about it. No one is. They might not like it, but they're not going to do anything to you about your truth because it is innately yours. So take up that space, be, and do it unapologetically. I have learned that, and while some people may go, oh, I always say, I don't care if you choke. I am giving you all of me holistically, and that is a blessing to be able to do that. I always tell people it's a privilege to have access to someone who has garnered this level of wisdom. And so make sure that you share that information, because there is someone in a corner, and I learned this from my mentees, somewhere that you don't think is paying attention to anything that you are doing. And I get these messages so much on LinkedIn saying, thank you, I heard you speak here, or thank you, I talked to you and you spoke a word into me and it was life-changing. You never know who's paying attention to your journey. And so it's always best to be unapologetically yourself, to take up that space and not be afraid, because the reality is we're all the same. We are all the same. We have the same fears, the same self-doubt, the same understandings. And so it is simply okay to be you. So take up all of that space.
Deanna, this has been so great. I thank you so much. Before we wrap up, I just have a few lightning round questions before we close up today. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Alrighty. What's one word that describes you in 2025? We're 8 months into the year. What's that one word?
Flow. That
Flow.
one word is flow.
Okay. The book or podcast that changed your perspective this year?
From Strength to Strength.
And last one, how does Deanna have fun? We know Deanna works, but how does she have fun?
Oh, you sound like my friends.
Uh-oh.
Travel.
Okay.
Brunch with friends. Amazing conversations. I think connection is important. And so you do that through community and conversations. And so I always say, find you a tribe that you can have real, honest dialogue with and have very robust conversations. It is so good for the soul.
Love it, love it, love it. Deanna Hamilton, it has been truly a pleasure. Thank you for being my special guest today on the Chundria Brownlow Show. If anybody is interested in connecting with you, maybe they could be your next mentee. If they'd like to follow you just to keep up with your journey and follow you to be inspired by your leadership, what's the best way to connect?
I am on IG and LinkedIn and Facebook, but Facebook, I leave that for the high school people that I went to high school with. But IG is Deanna L. Hamilton. LinkedIn is Deanna Hamilton MS. And then for LISC, It is definitely development@lisc.org. Please visit our website, LISC.org, where you can learn more about the work that we do, from community development work to our debt work, which is our small business lending, to our equity work, which is fund management, where we invest. Our largest portfolio is affordable housing. So if you are an entrepreneur or a developer, please find us. We are looking for you like you are looking for us.
What a powerful conversation with my special guest, Deanna Hamilton. Her journey, her leadership, and her purpose-driven mission are a reminder that when we show up as our full selves, unapologetically, we give others permission to do the same. So let's take a moment to sit with that. We're living in a time where fear is loud, distractions are many, and confidence can be shaken by a single scroll on social media, right? But purpose is deeply rooted. Purpose is quiet, but it's also consistent, and it doesn't need permission or even popularity. It needs alignment. And if you're watching this thinking, I'm not where I want to be yet, or I don't know what I'm called to do, I want to affirm you today. Your purpose isn't lost. It's just waiting on you to listen, to move, and to trust that it's already planted inside of you. Leadership today doesn't always come with a little title or a platform. It's really about choosing integrity over ego. It's about honoring your gifts even when they're still developing. And it's also about understanding that fear is very real, but it's not in charge. So if you're waiting for a sign to speak up, to start the thing, to leave that job, to start the new job, to start the new career, to say yes to something new, this is your sign to be fearless. And not because you're never afraid, I mean, let's be honest, but because you're more committed to your growth than your comfort. And here's the truth, you don't have to do it alone. Surround yourself with a tribe of people who won't let you shrink, people who mirror your values, challenge your excuses, and celebrate your breakthroughs. Because when you're walking in purpose, community matters. It sustains you, it stretches you, and it makes the journey so much sweeter. So today, let's commit to honoring what we've been called to do, even if it's hard, even if it's messy, even if it's still unfolding, because the world doesn't just need more content. The world needs more people who are truly connected to their calling. I want to thank you so much for watching the Chundria Brownlow Show today. And until next time, you take care of yourself, take charge of your life, and keep chasing purpose.
Come with me, I'm headed down the right path. I feel so brave, my head held high and I'm showing class. Dreams ignited, every day I truly give my best. I'm thriving excitedly to be the very best version of myself. I'm so bold and I'm so brilliant.